Hey, everybody.
Thanks for tuning in to the Hanging On to Hope podcast.
I'm Brenda J.
And I'm Karen Wonder.
And we are HangingOnToHope.org.
This podcast is intended as educational and is not psychological or medical advice. Always consult a professional when needed, and we disclaim any liability in connection with the instruction, information, or advice given. This podcast episode discusses the details of domestic violence. Some listeners might find this traumatizing and triggering. Do not listen to this podcast if you feel you may be triggered in any way. If this episode becomes triggering while you are listening, practice self-care and turn off the episode. If you need to talk to someone, you can reach out to your local crisis line or the website thehotline.org or their phone number 1-800-799-SAFE, 1-800-799-7233. All the links are provided in the show notes. Thanks for tuning in to the Hanging On to Hope podcast. This is Karen W. Today's subject matter is going to be difficult to hear, but it is necessary so that we can shine a light on the corruption that is going on in the court system and the incredible harm that it is causing on the children. On today's podcast, we have
Jane Doe,
who has helped form the Arizona Parents Against Court Corruption Coalition and is herself a victim of domestic violence and court abuse. We also have Rachel on the podcast today to share her story of survival from domestic violence and her case involving her 4 children, ages 7, 9, 9, and 10, being taken away from her to live with their abuser. We thank you both so much for being here, and we just want to say we stand with you in support of your situation. We want to bring attention to your case in the hopes that it'll bring some justice and safety for your children. So welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you so much for having us.
Well, hi, this is Brenda. It's nice to meet both of you.
Nice to meet you.
So the Arizona Families Against Court Corruption, their mission statement is, we are a group of protective parents united to bring awareness to the corruption within the court systems. We promote healthy, functional relationships between parents and their children and a safe environment free from any type of abuse. We advocate for the voices of our children to be heard, their rights to be protected, and their future to be secure.
Continuing with part 2.
And judges shouldn't have, there should be accountability in any kind of system like that. Like, you could get someone that's, I know Lindy Bancroft was talking about that. Like, if you have a judge that tends to have more of a narcissistic personality, he is going to rule more in the favor of an abuser because, he's coming from that perspective. So there should be in any system like that, somebody that has that much power, to make those decisions, to have somebody that has some accountability on the judge's character and all that type of thing.
It's just interesting that we're doing this podcast today and I'm like right in the middle of a child abuse case and he's 12 and he called DCS with the parent and said, I'm being abused and they haven't even, it's been over a week and a half, maybe 10 days. They haven't even responded. It's the point where I had to call and now he has to go back with the other parent that's abusing because he just didn't do anything about it. And so this is just breaking my heart right now because 12 is old enough to be able to listen to that child.
Yeah.
And try to keep that child safe, but it's not happening. So now that you're saying this, I'm like, well, this is happening right now and someone I'm trying to help. So Rachel, your motion for an emergency meeting was denied in spite of evidence that showed your children were suffering. You have a false order of protection against you. Can you share how you have tried to speak up and the outcome?
Yes, absolutely. Following my children being taken, I was trying to just, see what can I do to help, what can I do to get them back safe. And I want to go back to what you said before. My children have been labeled as being too well spoken. And so that has been a huge thing where, they've not been advocated for because they've tried to advocate for themselves. And it's been said that these children are just too well spoken. When my children were taken to the hospital and I was trespassed and told to leave the vicinity, my children were speaking up for themselves and they were expressing to the hospital staff their fear and whatever that was going on in them in that moment. One of my children has been seen at that hospital before. So I had set up a medical portal where I would receive any update on his health or health records that were adjusted, what have you. And so when I was trespassed, I began receiving notifications from the hospital, automatic notifications saying this child has been checked in. This child was in triage. This is what's going on with this child. And as I'm looking and seeing what's happening, that's how I learned that this child was actually going to be taken to another facility and placed in the psych ward, that he was expressing suicidal ideations, that he had expressed to the staff his fear for his father, the fact that he had been nearly drowned by his father, that he wanted to go home, he missed his mother. And I also received notification that DCS came to the hospital and was told that I had been arrested and I was in jail. And that is how the father was to have gotten the children. Subsequent to that, I began, receiving updates for this child saying that he was taken to the psych ward, that he was under observation, that they had taken pretty much anything he could have to hurt himself away from him. He continued to cry. He was just really beside himself. He was distraught. And I can only have medical records for this one child. I don't see what is going on with any of the other ones because they had not been seen at the hospital. So that's when I received notification that his diagnosis was now suicidal ideations, in addition to some other diagnoses that indicate he was in distress. I immediately borrowed money, tried to figure out what I could do to hurry up and get a lawyer and to get an emergency order put into place so that I can get the children back, get them stabilized. That order was immediately denied. And I was penalized. I was told by the judge, she wrote that on there, that because you filed this, anything else that you file is going to be scrutinized heavily. So pretty much a warning, like, stop filing things. Like, don't file anything. Like, this is what we're going to do to your children. Either you accept it or it's going to be more punishment for you. And I was not able to get anything to, ensure the safety of my children. A few days later, my children were presumably sent home from the hospital with their abuser. And I received a phone call from a number I didn't know. I answered the phone and there was a older child on the phone, an older person. And they said, hello. And when I said hello, then handed the phone to one of my boys. And he said, mommy, please, you have to come and get us now. You have to come and get us. And he was frantic, absolutely frantic. He said that, Mama, we have to get out of here. He's hurting us. He's throwing us around. I need you to come and pick me up.
That has to be just so heart-wrenching. I mean, my heart just goes out to you as a mom.
When was that?
This was a few days later. So this would have been, so if they were taken on the 27th, this would have been on the day after the 30th hearing. So the following day, this would have been on a Saturday. The hearing was on a Friday. And so that Saturday is when I received that call. And that's what within the very next week is what spiked me to go ahead and try to get that lawyer and get that emergency order, because my child called me in distress and said, Mom, please, you have to come and get us now. I told him, it broke my heart to tell him, Mommy can't come get you. Mommy's not even allowed to speak to you. I wasn't even allowed to speak to my child. So had he not called, had I had known that it was him calling, I would not have been able to answer the phone because the judge stated that I was not to have any contact with my children. He told me that he and his brothers were going to run away, that they were going to find a way to get out, that they were fearful. And so these children were in distress. I called the police in that area and I requested a wellness check. The police officers called me back. He was very nasty. He said, well, you know what? Because I'm a father, I will do this for you as a favor, but we're not supposed to be doing welfare checks. He went and did a welfare check, he stated. He called me back and told me my children were excited. They were happy to be there. And he told me that you can't be using the police to harass your ex. Don't call anymore.
Oh, I mean, I'm just speechless too. It's just mind blowing that there seems to be no concern for the safety of the children. And as a mom, I mean, any mom that loves their children is going to do whatever they can. So for them to say you can't, keep doing this, it doesn't make any sense.
This is about money. I think about when my divorce was initially granted and, it was $300. That was it. We were done and out. Like there was no concerns from that point forward. Even the teachers of my children said these children are well adjusted. There are no concerns. In the 2 years since this has began, there have been hundreds of thousands of dollars of money being generated, revenue through the family court system just based on my case, them appointing this person, them appointing that person. So this is really about the money. It's not about the children. It was stated even in the court. This is a direct quote. Children do not have a voice in the family court system. This is what the judge said. These children do not have a voice in the family court system, which is mind blowing because a family is encompassed of children, but these children do not have a voice. Decisions are made for them with less consideration than are made for animals in a divorce. If you get in a divorce and there's a dog involved, the judge will take into account what's the well-being of the animal. We don't want the animal going back and forth. That's not good for the animal's psyche. but the same considerations are not made for children.
It's just sickening. It is. But I know, see, Lundy Bancroft said the same thing. I mean, he's worked in the court system. You know, he's had experience where he's seen evidence that shows proof that there was abuse. And he said they don't look at it, that you just follow the money trail.
No.
That's what he was saying.
And I mean, that's like a typical narcissist response that when he did the welfare check to the house, I'm sure the ex-husband was like, they totally, you know, manipulate the police and act like they've never done nothing wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Like my 3 kids, when the police came to my house, my 3 kids, we all the same testimony. And he actually like pulled out knives on himself and was acting like a crazy person. And then he acted like, oh, I was just watching TV. I don't know what you're talking about. Like, and an officer goes, you guys just all gave the same exact account. And he just acted like absolutely nothing happened at all that night. And it was just crazy because the officer actually did know at that point that he was wrong.
Yeah.
Because we all had the same testimony, but they were older. See, they listened to them because they were older kids. They should be listening to
younger. He still
younger.
didn't get arrested that night though, did he?
No, he still didn't get arrested
That's the
because
thing.
he just lied the whole time. Yeah, there was nothing they could do. They asked him to leave. He lied and said he had nowhere to go. But he still got away with everything. He did. So,
So you were allowed to see your children for the first time since their abduction on August 2nd. Did you want to share about that visit?
Yes, absolutely. Once again, that visit was so wonderful to see them, but it was bittersweet because even prior to that visit, at this point, it had been over a month since I had almost, pretty much 5 weeks since I had seen my children, where originally it was stated that I would be able to see my children in the middle of July. And so when it was time to schedule that visitation again with the same visitation supervisor who, had a history of being dishonest in my case and many other people's who I requested not be reappointed to my case, she told me, well, you know what? I want you to meet with your children in a court. And I said, no, this is not conducive to the well-being of my children. So I actually had to go back and forth with her for several days to even get her to afford me the rights that are included in her agreement that states that I'm able to select the location with which to meet with my children as long as it's an appropriate location. I initially wanted to meet with my children at a therapeutic facility. It's actually a facility specifically for supervised visitation. I requested that because of the history between myself and this visitation supervisor. And I wanted to eliminate the possibility that she would then misrepresent me again in a court document or a report stating that something happened that did not happen. When I made that suggestion, which I would have to have paid for, she was enraged. She was so angry that I would suggest something that would protect me and my children. How dare you make such a suggestion? And she denied it, and she brought in his lawyer, and they threatened me and said, we're going to let the judge know that you are trying to, again, usurp the authority of the court, that you were, again, trying to manipulate and get over just because I suggested that we meet at a facility that is court approved for supervised visitation. So I immediately gave in. I just wanted to see my children. And I said, well, I'll meet with them at the library. She says, well, no, because you made the suggestion for a supervised facility that I'm not going to let you meet with them at the library. You have to meet with them in the court. I had to beg and plead and cite her own rules against her. And finally, she gave in. And I met with my children at the library. When my boys saw me, they immediately began to cry. They embraced me. They were beside themselves. They're not well. In front of the supervised visitation person. And she brought a man with her. So her boyfriend or a friend of hers. And we were only permitted to meet in a very small little study room. So we just piled the chairs in the room and we met. And the boys began to outline many, many things that have happened since they left. Many abuses that they have suffered ongoing. And she listened. She did not make any remarks. And that lasted for 2 hours of the boys begging to come home, pleading, crying, stating what was going on, and nothing was done or said.
That's unbelievable.
I mean, isn't that her job too, to report honestly, like what she hears? You would think priority would be the sanity of the kids and, the safety of the kids.
I mean, that's just horrible.
Right. This is important too. At one point, the boys asked, they said, Mom, do you have anything to eat? And I said, no, I'm so sorry. I didn't bring anything. Around the library where we met, there is a duck pond. So I had bought a loaf of bread. So I told the boys, I said, Mommy, so sorry. If I would have known that you hadn't eaten or you were hungry, I would have brought some snacks. Please forgive me. All I have is this loaf of bread. And the children said, Mommy, can we have that? Can we eat that? And my children began to devour a loaf of bread that I had in the bottom of a bag. No peanut butter and jelly, just plain bread. Mommy, we're so hungry.
They didn't eat anything.
They hadn't had anything to eat.
Wow.
And that's another thing, that's very common. Any expert appointed in the cases that in this case, for example, a supervisor, the judge extend the immunity to them. So they work and do the same thing, whatever they want. They report whatever they want, and they do not report the important things because they just want to continue the court case to stay in the court and generating more money for the court, generating money for them, because the supervisors are very expensive too. And what is also mind-blowing is the fact that most of the states here in the United States doesn't have any requirements to be a supervisor. So, for example, like in Arizona, there's no requirements whatsoever for somebody to be a supervisor. It can be a criminal and can be a supervisor. Can be anything and be a supervisor.
I remember seeing the jobs. I mean, there are quite a few jobs for that, and you're right, because I almost applied for something like that, but there is no requirements.
There's no requirements.
Wow.
Anybody can be, and there's no rules. And in theory, you are supposed to be a mandatory reporter. But for example, as Rachel was telling you a moment ago, this actually supervisor that she has in particular, she is very corrupted. And there are multiple parents that we have in the group that have had her assigned as a supervisor, and the cases have even become worse because she lies in the reports. She lies in the stand when she is testifying, and she's not pro the children. She's just about the money. So what Rachel just described, it is terrible. And it's again what I was mentioning a moment ago, is because the judges give immunity to all these people that are part of the court system. So it can be a supervisor, it can be a therapeutic interventionist, it can be a forensic psychologist, any or real estate commissioner or forensic analyzer. I mean, there's so many, best interest attorneys, court-appointed experts. I mean, you name it. And all of these people that are assigned in the case, they have full immunity on do whatever they want in the case. They are very rare, the ones that actually care and do something, but even when they say something, the judges override them. So for example, in the case of Rachel, the DCS case worker, she tried. The judge and the court-appointed advisor, it didn't do a bad report on Rachel either. And still, nobody pay attention to what she say. So it is very heartbreaking and mind-blowing.
Yeah.
What they are doing, like, is pure evil. Like, there's no other description. It's just pure evil.
Right. Because the number one priority should be the safety of the children, but that's not.
It's not
done at all.
And as mothers, I think we can't make sense of this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we're all mothers.
Right. We all have that mother instinct. Like,
that's
my heart goes out to Rachel.
So horrible. So is there anything else you want to share about your case and ways your case can be put into the spotlight to help bring more awareness to this injustice, Rachel?
Absolutely. I think that, in my case and others as well, like, we just really need to just fully, not live in fear. I think that's the biggest thing. They dangle our children almost, over this proverbial like cliff. If you don't do this, if you don't do that, then we're going to drop the children. And as mothers, we have this instinct, we don't want our children to be hurt. I think about the story of King Solomon and how it was the baby. And those two women were both saying, this is my baby. This is my baby. Yeah. And then King Solomon said, okay, well, I'll just split the baby. And immediately, instinctively, the real mother said, no, don't hurt my baby. Just let her have it. I'd rather my baby be alive and not with me. I'd rather my child's safety comes first. And the other person, yeah, go ahead. I think that's a great idea. That's a wonderful solution. I think that's a great example of how it is when the abuser is in the court system and the protective parent is, because we just want our children to be whole. They want the children to be torn apart because they don't have that feeling. They don't have those natural affections that a protective parent has for their child. Mm-hmm. And I think that it's so important that even as they push back, that we push back harder and say, I'm not going to go anywhere. I'm not going to, do these things. This is all about money. I requested, since the visit on the 2nd, I said, can I please get a copy of your notes? And I was told, if you pay me $400 and something, almost $500, then I'm going to send a copy to the court and then you can get a copy from there. And so it's all about the money. It's all about generating revenue. And so we really have to be very hyper focused and just vigilant about bringing awareness to this. And it's so hard because there have been times even in the midst of this where I've thought to myself, well, maybe if I just be quiet, and I'll just keep my head low and I'll just do what they say, then maybe at some point that it's just a tug of war. They'll give in and give me my children back. No, That has not been my experience. When they have made their decision, and I think this is important for all protective parents to understand, it's not about you. It's not because I failed my children. It's not because I was too boisterous. It's not because my children are too well spoken. They'll say things to you, and there's so many of them coming at you, all these court people coming at you, and they're all saying the same thing. Oh, you're a coach. You're coaching your kids. You're coaching your kids. And it makes you second guess yourself. Like, what? Is this possible? But I realized, what sense does that make? If we could coach our children, I would coach my children to keep their bathroom clean, to not, sass me. We're not going to, as protective parents and logical people, we're not going to coach our children to feel a certain way about someone who's wonderful and protective. Because at the end of the day, if I could co-parent with my ex-husband, if he was not an abuser, if he did not have vested interest in hurting my children as a means of getting back to me because I walked away from him, then I would love that, because that would allow me to have a very well-rounded life. I could enjoy hobbies and do things like that. Because I would be able to know my children are safe with their father. I would love that. Most of us, all of us would love that. Yeah. No one wants that. No one wants this level of discord.
Right.
And most of us have not been. For me, 4 years. I feel like I haven't taken a breath in 4 years. There are other people I've met who've been going through this for 10, 15 years, for 10 or 15 years of just living a stressed, full life. Just nothing to look forward to, just trying to fight to protect your children. And so it's so important. It's so incredibly important for us to understand, like, it's not us. This is a system that was built on the backs of our babies. And the best we can do is to empower our children to continue to speak up and not to feel ashamed of themselves. And so I told my boys when I saw them, I said, boys, you did nothing wrong. You keep speaking up. You keep telling. I learned that they were taken out of school. They're not in school. Whoever you can tell, you tell. And we have to do the same thing. We can't be fearful. We have to keep blowing the whistle. We have to keep saying something, because at some point, someone's going to listen, and this whole thing is going to turn over, and we're going to be able to get our babies back into our hands, into a place of being safe and sound, and being able to have the life that God intended them to have, of being free and being able to be safe. And that's all they want. All our kids want is to be safe. They're entitled to that.
Right. They're human beings, in God's image. And everyone I talk to about this is horrified. So that's why we just need to expose this. And that, this podcast is called Hanging On to Hope, because we have to have hope that there is going to be justice, because this is so wrong. And the fact that they would accuse you of coaching, like you were saying, it just doesn't make any sense.
Right.
The whole logic of it, it is, you can see that it's all just a corrupt system that's in need of complete dismantling, or whatever needs to happen. I don't know. But it's just outrageous. So do you want to share any more about what can be done and how we can provide more support to get justice for the many families going through this, like Rachel?
Yes. Additional of what Rachel expressed very well, very eloquent and everything that about giving a voice to our kids, we really need exposure. Mm-hmm. We have to be loud and exposed this corruption. It has gone way too long. It has gone way too bad. This is something that we cannot longer look the other way and be quiet. As Rachel was saying, we cannot be quiet anymore. We cannot be saying, well, maybe if we obey the law, and there is no law. Which law are you talking about? This is a huge corruption. They are not even following their law. Mm-hmm. There is no violation of the basic human rights that our kids and all of us protective parents have. It's just the basics of just to be alive. Right. This is something that is so wrong. So in ways that you can help us is give us a channel to speak up and be loud.
Yeah.
And that this has to be exposed. Everybody in the street that doesn't know about the family court system, thinking that we are in the land of the free, is wrong. We are not in the land of the free. This is a huge oppression. They are destroying basically our future generations, our kids. This is really bad.
Yeah.
So if anything that you can help us expose more, we will bring more parents. Similar cases of Rachel. All of them have some differences between the cases, but the bottom line is that we are being accused of alienation, coaching in order for the family court system to profit and traffic our children. That's not okay.
Right.
There's no justice. There has to be a huge reform in what actually the justice system is. because what is happening right now, that's not justice.
Right. Justice is not being served.
So what I
No.
found was interesting that you said earlier that other countries is where they actually do listen to the children. Their testimony is accounted for. What country
Yes.
did you mention?
Pretty much all Latin America,
Latin
the
America.
Latin Americas. So everybody under Mexico, like
Yeah.
all in Latin America is the opposite. Over there, you are guilty until proved innocent.
Mhm.
And especially in the cases of any type of abuse with children, the judge will call the child to testify in court and say, like, what happened? Tell me what happened.
Mhm.
And they go to jail. Like, if something like this happened, they go to jail. There's no leniency or saying, like, here. Like, another thing that is very mind blowing is the fact that as a protective parent, you are treated like the worst criminal. But when the abuser not following court orders, lying and doing all kind of stuff against the court orders and against actually the normal standard rules in society, the judges don't do anything to them. They almost say like, oh yeah, I understand. Like, okay, but don't do it again. Don't do it again.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
if the protected parent do like a little tiny thing, and even if they don't do anything, and it's just lies coming from the opposite, the abuser, they believe what the abuser, and then we get with severe punishment, economical or jail time for trying to protect the kids. And for example, as Rachel was expressing a moment ago, she tried to follow the court orders, and she was following the court orders, and still the ex-husband was still telling the court, no, she's not. It was a lie. She has all evidence showing that she was following the court orders.
Mm.
And still the court believed the abuser, and the court imposed all the attorney's fees to Rachel, even though she did nothing wrong.
Oh, it's
And
crazy.
Still do that.
There's a hierarchy of power that's, just trumps the whole system. That you're
It's
just-
one more thing I'm sorry, I want to say it, and it really just echoes what you said. I think that it's very important. My ex-husband at one point had chased me in a school building, and he was found an hour later by the police waiting for me in the parking lot to come out of the building, and he had a loaded gun. And I requested an order of protection, and it was granted and then squashed, and then I was penalized for it. And the judge stated, how dare you request an order of protection against him? He has the right to co-parent his children. And even though he was found with that loaded gun, this is an open carry state. He has the right to be there with a gun. And for you to do that, you're wrong, because you tried to prevent him from having time with his children. So his right to carry a gun and for him to be in a parking lot waiting with a gun superseded and surpassed my right to safety, though he was found having chased me in that building, and it was noted that he was waiting for me to exit, and in his lap was a loaded gun.
Yeah, that just makes me so
Yeah.
angry, because we hear about on the news, so we know it happens. So for them to not take that seriously just shows the depth of the corruption.
Yeah. And this podcast is listened to in 68 countries. So it is nice. That's why I wanted to mention the Latin America. And I'm not sure what listeners from Europe and that will be listening. And I'm not sure how the court systems are there.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that they do let the children have a voice if they're being abused. I did know somebody in America that the child was able to give his testimony and be with the parent based off of that, but that wasn't an abuse case. So it's interesting how in a non-abuse case, they let the child speak and listen to the child, but in an abuse case, they won't even listen to the child, which their safety is at stake.
Yeah.
So it just doesn't make any sense to me. But is there a law that states that the child's not able to testify? I'm just confused. Like, why won't they listen to the child?
There's no laws that says that.
So
There's no
they
law.
could just start listening to the children more.
Well, as you were saying a moment ago, there's a lot of fathers' rights and another groups that are actually protecting also all these experts. It's a huge group actually manipulating the family court system and the fathers' groups. It has get to the point where they don't really want to listen because it's about the money. The bottom line here is the money.
Yeah.
So if there's a way that they can get money out of you using your kids, they will do it. It doesn't matter.
That's true.
So actually, I was just looking here. One of the institutions that is doing this stuff is AFCC, is the Association of Family Court Conciliation. Is a huge entity in the United States and is composed of lawyers, psychologists, judges, and you name it. So all of them are the ones that actually make the rules. And we are just at the end of that bargain and where they say what they are going to do with our cases. So they have a lot of power. It's really bad because, they are very well organized. So they are the ones that have implemented the alienation therapy, alienation bogus diagnosed so that they can profit from it.
Yeah.
They are the ones that make the rules. And that's the sad part.
Yeah.
We have no saying. And also they do and whatever they want.
Yeah.
They have immunity to do whatever they want.
Yeah. And then the safety is just not provided for. When we had Lundy Bancroft on, he had written a book. He had written a novel, actually. It was about this kind of a situation, but in the situation, the woman fled with their child because she was kind of forced to do that. And he said that that's happening less and less because now it's hard to do that, because everyone has phones and, it's hard and, it'd be a difficult thing to do anyway. But, these moms get so desperate that that's all they can do. But he wrote that book to try to, wrote it in novel form, hoping people would read it because it's kind of a thriller. But he was hoping it would educate people, to do something because he was trying to expose that too, saying that the court is not helping the children. It's forcing some of these moms to have no other choices sometimes. So I just commend you both that you're trying to be a part of change and you guys are just warriors. My heart goes out to both of you, especially you, Rachel, with what you're going through right now. And I just hope that we can get people enough to do something.
We thank you both again for being here and sharing your stories so that we can bring justice in DV court cases and safety to the children. Can you share your website's Facebook page and info for our listeners?
Yes, it's the Arizona Parents Against Court Corruption Facebook page. Over there, we're just posting some of the information that we have. As our organization is not that old. We just started recently in June, but so far we have 100 followers right now and counting. Like every day we have a lot of requests to join because as I was saying, this is a pandemic in itself of what's going on with the kids in the court. We're trying to bring awareness, but we're trying to make change, which is something that we are trying to start doing very soon. But as I'm saying, it is a very difficult issue. It's a very difficult situation that we're going against this huge entity, which is actually find the real name here, is the Association of Family and Conciliation Courts, which is a big entity across of all the states. They have so many members and they are the ones that dictate what's happening in our family court system, very much in the family court system and the juvenile and the criminal court system as well. So if anybody wants to join us, they can join us to the Arizona Parents Against Court Corruption Facebook page. And also right now, I just want to thank you, both of you, to give us the opportunity to be here with you. And I just want to read Psalm 10, 17, 18. Oh Lord, you hear the desire of the afflicted. You will strengthen our heart. You will incline your ear to do justice to the fatherless and to the oppressed, so that man who is on the earth might strike terror no more. Psalm 10, 17, 18. And with that being said, thank you so much, Brenda and Karen, to allow us to be here with you today.
Oh, thank you guys for being here.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for coming on to the show. We really just appreciate all this information and your willingness to speak up and have a voice. So important.
Yes. And that was a good way to end on it, because God is a God of justice. And as Christians, we can't just sit and be silent.
Yes. And thank you so much, Rachel. We're so sorry for what you're going through.
Well, thank you so much for this platform.
Yes. Thank you. I just appreciate you guys so much.
Yeah. Thanks for being on the podcast.
Thanks for tuning in to Hanging On to Hope. Check out our website, hangingontohope.org. There are resources on there. And if you would like to donate or volunteer, you can do that through our website. We are a brand new nonprofit, so we appreciate any and all support. And we thank you for listening. And until next time, keep hanging on to hope. We are evidence that there is hope and healing for you, and our passion is to help you find it too. So thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for listening, everyone.